Air. Hi, everybody. Welcome to FriYAYs with Kyla. Today we have a very special guest all the way from Brussels, Belgium. She's been there. This is my really good friend, Anna. She's originally from Poland, but she's been working as a consultant for 7 years in change management, helping organizations with the change journey, developing and finding their personal visions. And she's just a rock star. We actually met a few years ago at the Global Women's International Network Conference in Rome. We were like at the Young Leader together. So welcome.
Hi, everyone.
Thank you so much for joining us. It's like early morning in Belgium.
Yes, not that early, but it's in the morning, so on a Friday. And yeah, thank you for having me, Kyla. It's really awesome, and I'm very happy I can join you for the Friday session that you're having on a weekly basis.
Yay! So we'll like jump into the questions if that's okay.
Yeah, absolutely.
Okay,
I have a few for you as well, but maybe I can ask them at a later stage then.
Sure. Okay, so, since you work in change and change management and you help organizations with change, why do you think change is so important?
That's a big one. I think change is an undeniable part of our lives, both on a personal level and professionally. And so personally for me, change is extremely important. Because for me, it means growth. It means learning new things, going through new experiences, learning also new things about myself internally, getting to know myself better. But I think, on a broader level, change is very important because depending on how we manage it, and I mean both for ourselves on a personal level, but also if you think, if you manage change in an organization, if you don't really know how to go through it, and if you don't do it properly, this can be something that can either make you or break you on an individual level and as an organization. And since it's here to stay, I mean, as I said, change is part of our lives. It's not something you can opt out from. So it's very important to actually, grasp a couple of elements that are key to actually lead a healthy change process. And it can be in your personal life, it can be your professional life on an individual level and organization-wise.
Yeah, that's so great. I mean, we know like for humans, it's so challenging for us to actually create change and stick to that change and let that be a part of our daily lives.
Absolutely. And if you think about it, I mean, most of us would consider change as a loss, that we lose something. But actually, it often is the source of so much, positive emotions, new experiences, and greatness that can happen in our lives. That this is also about, a mindset and a little bit of a shifting how we think about it.
Yeah, oh my gosh, mindset is so key. I was literally just having this conversation with some coach friends of mine last night. So you're the change guru, and we know change is not easy for us, but if we do change, there's positivity and, success and growth and all of these amazing things. What are some, tips that you can help us with change?
Sure. So, I mean, change is, it's not an easy subject, of course, but there are a couple of elements that one can keep in mind. And again, both whether you're going through a personal change or whether you're managing a change process in an organization, that can actually help you through it. I think the first part is really to keep in mind that, change is not really about optimizing processes or just shifting how you do certain things. It's really about people. And because it's about people, it's about emotions. And this is something that we need to keep in mind. Always think about the emotions. Whether you're trying to go through a process of change yourself, realize and understand that there will always be difficult emotions to manage. Yeah, I don't want to say negative necessarily, but there are always, there are different stages, and there's always a moment where you will feel a little bit afraid or unsure. This is normal. And realizing that this is part of the process is extremely helpful. If you're managing a change process in an organization, it's the same. Understand that people in your team, in your organization, will inevitably, at least some of them, go through stages where there will be denial, they will be afraid, they will be angry, they will try to sabotage maybe the process. And being ready for that and actually knowing how you can manage these emotions and how you can help to shape the flow and use that different momentum for different stages in the change process is extremely important. The second thing that I always keep in mind, and I always tell my clients as well, and friends and anyone who's coming to me to talk about change, is, remember the power of storytelling, essentially, and clear communications. And again, it works on both levels, personal and organizational. If you're leading a change process in an organization, you want to be clear in how you communicate about it, but you also want to keep in mind the power, as I said, of storytelling. Bring people on board, work with your people in the team, in the organization, to not just, be kind of a victim of the change process, but actually to drive that change process. And you will create a lot of buy-in, you will create a lot of empowerment because people will be shaping the story with you and they will feel owners of the story. So in a way, if they co-create the change process, then they are much more invested in it. On a personal level, it's very similar in the sense that how you shape your story of change, both internally towards yourself, but then also externally if you want to, shift your own professional, for example, journey. The story that you create around it and how you communicate about it is key. It's absolutely essential because it creates emotion in people as well. So you counter possibly the negative emotions with something that is positive and that brings other along with you. And how you present that is extremely important. And I guess the final point that I wanted to mention here is that, again, change is a state of mind. If we think about the world today, change is in any case an inherent part of our lives. But if we look at the world today and at the pace at which change is happening, technologically and on many different levels, the speed is increasing and it's here to stay. And I think one thing to realize, again, both on the personal level and potentially organizational level, is that what we need is to feel comfortable, not always knowing 100% what's coming at us next. Developing that, that sense of, I'm okay, I don't take my self-value and my self-worth from this particular thing that I do personally or professionally in my life, or this particular job that I have, but rather linking it to our broader personal vision and values. The same for organizations is extremely important, and it's only going to be more important in the future because we will need to face situations where change will be incremental, the pace will grow, and it is, the change is the new normal, I would say.
Well, yeah, there's so many golden nuggets in there. I love what you said about, working with your team to create change so they have buy-in, so they're part of a larger story. I love what you said about change being the new normal and, how fast-paced our world is. I heard some crazy statistics about how, in the last, since the internet was created, we have so much more knowledge since then than we've ever had in the whole history of our time ever.
Wow. Yeah.
It's just, it's so intense, but it's out. You're absolutely right in everything you're saying, in the sense of, I think, we as humans have this false sense that we can control things. Mm. And so that's, that's kind of tied up in perfectionism, and wanting to be perfect, wanting things to be the way that you want. And going back to what you're saying, Anna, about how, then attaching that to your self-worth and your self-value. And then when things don't go the way that you expect them to, you're like, oh, I couldn't control that. Like, oh my gosh.
But, if you think about our parents, or our grandparents, they would usually typically have one job for life, yeah, or live in the same place throughout their whole life. That probably holds true for the majority of people. Now, if you think already about, people that are now between 30s and 40s, and if you think about the new generation that is entering the workforce now, I mean, you just change jobs much more frequently, you change locations, and this is the new normal. So at the same time, you can't always expect that your next job will just be kind of, a few steps up and up the ladder. This is not what people want, but also this is just impossible. What we need to realize is that, change can also go in diagonal, and we grow from different experiences. And we can actually use different skill sets that we develop in our, in different roles that we naturally have in life, because all of us, we have more than one role in life in any case. And we can apply them across the different roles and across the different things that we do in our life. And this is, I think, extremely beneficial also throughout if you go through a change process, is just to realize that very often we actually have a lot of resources that we don't realize we do.
Yeah, no, you're absolutely right. Like I read somewhere that the average millennial changes their job 4 times. My dad had like one job. His life, same bank, like. So yeah, absolutely. So the last question,
yes,
of course, it's related to happiness. You've touched kind of briefly about, positivity and change and the mindset around change. And I'm just curious because, like I love talking about happiness, but what do you think is the relationship between change and happiness, if there is one?
I do think there is a relationship between change and happiness. And, I think they are directly related between each other. And it really works both ways, in the sense that I think that, if you go through a change process successfully, if you indeed do not link your self-worth with a specific little detail in your life that you do, but rather you're able to comprehend it in a more global way, then it is easier for you to feel happy, whatever that means, because that also is a very complex term. Now, if you do feel fulfilled and you feel happy in your life, then it is also much easier to actually approach change in a positive way, to see change as something that brings you value rather than something that makes you lose something, and also to find yourself in this new world, in this new reality, where we cannot always anticipate what the change will be. We know it will happen, but we cannot always anticipate. So I think it is extremely important, and I see a sort of a circular relationship there, where it really both things influence each other and are directly related.
Yeah, that's great. I love that. It's kind of like a virtuous cycle.
Absolutely, yeah.
The more change, the more growth and happiness, and the more happiness, the more growth, and it's kind of like upwards and upwards.
Absolutely. And the great thing about this is that there are different triggers, I guess. So you can start from one point and then it sort of reinforces itself. Of course, I don't think it's easy at all. But also it's not a very simple equation, whereas, one thing happens like that and then that's it, we're finished, the conversation is done. You can actually influence it from different points. I actually love this spiral metaphor. That's great. But that links as well, because I mentioned I have some questions for you too, and that links very much to one of the questions that I had, which is essentially, do you see happiness as something that is something internal to us and personal, or is it something that we can actually develop with other people?
Yeah, I mean, I'd have to say it's both.
Mm-hmm.
And I mean, some people would see it as a chicken and egg situation where, if you don't have a lot inside, and you go out, it's the happiness is kind of amplified. But to me, I think, everybody has an internal glass and an external glass. And in our society, we're taught to fill the external glass with like accomplishments and even, compliments and awards, stuff that you put on the resume. But the thing is, right? So if you have these two glasses and, this one is full, this is the external one, this is the internal one. The more you fill this one, it's not going to necessarily spill over into the internal one. So to me, I think both are equally important, and data supports that, but we have to start with ourselves first. So the more you can build not just happiness, but resiliency, positivity, things that you've talked about, growth, change, not taking things personally in terms of your self-worth and self-value. The more work on yourself you do with yourself, the more and the stronger those connections can be, right? Because also at the end of the day, nobody wants to hang out with like negative Nelly all the time.
True. Very true.
But at the same time, we know, looking at the longest survey on happiness out of Harvard, the people, so this is a 75-year study, the people that were the happiest were the ones that had the strongest connections. So, they're both sides to it for sure.
I mean, I think that ties in very, very much to the fact that, there are so many people that theoretically, if you look at their outside dimension, should be happy in the sense, they have all the accomplishments and so on, and still something is missing. Internally, they don't have their balance, their peace, I guess.
Right. I mean, it's like the Anthony Bourdains and the Kate Spades.
Yeah. And I mean, personally, where do you take your happy from?
Yeah, that's a great question. I mean, and it's constantly evolving as I evolve and as my happiness journey evolves. We're all in a different place in our journeys, and that's totally okay. Something that I'm working on now, and that's so tough, is when I get into a spot. So let's say, somebody calls you out on something, you get some feedback that maybe you didn't like. Everything goes back to ego. This is my new thing that I'm just realizing.
Yeah.
And so what I do is I have a conversation with my ego. So why am I angry or why am I upset? Is it the truth, or is it that my ego is upset? Is it I'm upset, or is it my ego? And like 9 times out of 10, or like 10 times out of 10, it's the ego. And it's a hard conversation to have. But the more you do it, the more you practice, the easier it gets. And the more you can listen to that internal voice, not the critical one, but the true self one. Yeah. And then drown out the other voices, right, that are telling you what you should do and stuff like that.
That is a great idea. And this is so powerful. And it really is also, I mean, if you think about it, knowing yourself well allows you to actually do that kind of reflection and understanding that at times there are certain emotions that are inside you, but you can manage that and you can have that conversation with your ego and actually see, okay, is that really me, or is it just that my ego feels that way, or is pushing that emotion towards me? Okay, wow. And then so question based on that, I mean, are there any triggers that you can use to kind of set yourself in the happy mode when you're going through a rough period, you're having a hard time with something, or you just you feel down?
Yeah, I mean, there's so many. So for me, I think there's three main things. The first one is to have a physical space.
Mm-hmm.
So when you have a physical space, the mental follows. And that can be, like a clean desk, or for me, that's a swimming pool.
Okay.
So and the reason I bring that up is when I swim, I cannot be interrupted. So I can't bring my phone in there. Well, I guess I could get like one of those waterproof bags.
Well,
that's
you cannot do that.
Yeah, no. So I'm totally unplugged. Nobody can bother me. It's not something that I do with other people. I mean, this is when I'm with my thoughts. So that's the space for me, physical and then mental, and then it sets the day, right? Because what we're getting now, and we talk about technology, right? You talk about the insane rate of change. What we're seeing now is, people wake up and the first thing they do is they reach for their phone. And so the entire day you're in this fog, right? And we know from data, anytime you're multitasking, you're losing 10 IQ points. So you're back and forth and you're back and forth, and then you're running around like a chicken with its head cut off. So that's the first thing I would say. Just clear the space.
Yeah.
The second thing I would say is be purposeful with who you're meeting, why you're meeting. Is there a purpose to that meeting? To your life? What's that impact you're creating? What's that change that you personally want and for your organization? And what's the growth? And if not, don't do it. Rather take yourself out for a nice cup of coffee. Because the day is the way in which we live. We live in these cities. Most of us live in these cities. We live in this high-paced, frenetic change. Our ancestors, and therefore us, we're not built for this. We're built for nature, hunting and gathering. We're not built for meeting, schedule. And then, I would schedule that kind of time in, for yourself, with yourself, right? Like coffee date with myself, 4:00. Make yourself a priority. And then the third thing I do very well, I'm extremely good at self-care.
It's great.
I should write that on my resume. I'm really skills.
Perfect.
So I love going to the Korean spa, or getting a mani-pedi or a massage, or just for example, my Monday, Wednesdays, and Fridays, I do a boot camp class with some women in the community, and that's a value of mine. I prioritize above everything else. And so I will not schedule any meetings during that class time, and even during lunch, because we'll go get lunch together. And it's such a, that's the social connection, the social bond, the happiness. And then keeping balance with all three. Right. That's really another challenge to work on. But yeah, that's constantly evolving too. And that's okay.
No, that's. I think you've also touched upon a number of many very important points, but it's great to have some ideas, indeed, how you can set yourself in that mode, because it's true that we often are indeed, not just the change, but I mean, just the world is moving at such a high pace that we don't take the time to actually, be with ourselves and think a bit, just, understand what we want, where our priorities lie, think about where our values are and are we aligned with these values, putting together, our own vision of, where we want to go, who we want to be, what we want to be doing, and what impact we want to have, I think is, it's very strong.
Yeah, no, I love it. And, I'm so grateful to you because just recently I had this epiphany. You know how life, when you're not on that true track, your true calling of, whether it's change, which is so scary, or digging deeper and listening to that voice within, or whatever it is, the universe presents itself with these amazing opportunities for you to come back to yourself and with yourself.
Absolutely.
And one of the things I just want to share with everybody, one of these opportunities was Anna, you have a change management workshop coming up that you're doing on the 9th, right?
Yeah, on the 8th. Yeah.
On the 8th. I'd like to push it back, give you an extra day to prepare. But on the 8th, and something that just surprised me, I think the world of Anna, she started her own consulting business. She's been doing it for 7 years. I mean, she's like this amazing, fabulous young female entrepreneur. But, Anna came to me and she was like, I'm doing this change management thing. And, I just totally thought of with versus at, and I'd love to get your input on that, to incorporate it maybe into my workshop. And I was like, what? Secretly freaking out about it. But it was like this message that, Kyla, your work is important. And, it's your stuff. Get your stuff out. And, and it's so personal and it's so related to my book. And, and that stuff is so hard. But oftentimes, in those moments of self-doubt, you have these amazing mirrors in the form of friends who are doing also amazing work. And, those opportunities come at you and with you. And it's in those moments that you can either embrace the change or, choose to ignore it. And I think, your work is so important because you are about embracing that change and those opportunities, that subconsciously or consciously you created for me. I'm just so grateful for that. And also, so Anna, in addition to all the other amazing things that she's doing, she also sits on the board of this professional women's international networking organization. And she invited me to speak, on November 15th.
Yes.
So,
we're doing a webinar, so it's going to be awesome. I can't wait. And I have to say the response has also been, really great from our network and from people that have received the invitation. So I think it's just, it's a clear message that people are looking for ways to actually be more happy and to understand how they can incorporate that in their everyday life, personal, professional, on both sides. And, to what you mentioned about creating change opportunities, this for me is also the very basic principle of change, is actually certain things, present themselves in your life, and it's up to you to seize that opportunity. But it's, again, if you're able to look at change in a positive manner, and if you're able to look at it as something that brings you value and brings you something new, then you will jump on it and you will, try new things. And who knows, maybe something awesome will come out of it. And, it could just increase your happiness.
Yay, like a webinar.
Yeah, indeed. But actually, so the great thing about the webinar is that I don't know if this is also somewhere mentioned on your website, but it is open. We want to be very inclusive about it. So obviously we've launched it for our members, but it is also open to non-members and to everyone actually around the globe. So maybe you can also share the link with other people, and if someone is interested, they can register and join us in 2 weeks time.
Yeah, so I think it'll be like, because it's 12:30 Eastern European or Central European time, right?
Yes, it's 12:30 Central European time, Brussels time. And I think what we have discussed is that we do this sort of the core webinar for 1 hour. So if people are around here, they're on a lunch break, and then for half an hour we will have a Q&A with you. So the participants to the webinar can actually ask the questions. But I think maybe worth mentioning is actually, because we realize, and Professional Women International Brussels is an association for professional women. So, people are busy. Sometimes they travel for work. They will not be able to attend. If you register, and if you register to participate, essentially, and you're not able to be there live with us, you will still get the access to the recording of the whole session, both the webinar and the Q&A afterwards, that you will be able to check out yourself and download during 1 week after the webinar. Yeah.
Great. Well, remind us what the fee was, Anna, for the non-members.
Good question. Let me check quickly.
Take your time. Or we can also...
I'm a member, so I don't have to...
Free for you.
I don't have to focus that much on the non-members fee, but I mean we're making sure that it is accessible to everyone. So for non-members, the fee is 25 euros.
Okay, great.
Yeah, and you can pay by PayPal as well when you register, so it's really very easy. Otherwise, bank transfer is also possible, but we're very flexible, so there are always ways to make it happen if you're interested.
Yay. So I think that'll be 8:30 Korea time, 12:30 Brussels time. And we may have some people join us from Malaysia as well.
That's great. That's fantastic.
Malaysia time.
PWI Brussels is a member of a global network as well. So we also will surely have people joining from other city networks. And some of them are around Europe, but we also have others. We have a network in the UAE, for example, Southeast Asia as well. So we may have people joining from different regions of the world. And that's great, because that's all about it. Webinar is also a very unique tool that I love using, because it can bring people together from the whole world.
Yeah, it's so great. I mean, embracing change and technology in a positive way to bring people together and connecting and happiness and so much goodness. So if anybody wants to connect with Anna, like I've posted a link to her website, her consulting company, and then they can just reach out to you there, right?
Of course. I mean, on the website, you have all the contact details. Just drop me an email. You can message me on LinkedIn. I'm a very connected person, so there are always ways to connect.
Yay. Great. Well, thank you so much, Anna, for your time, the Friday morning, and all of your insights on change. It's been absolutely inspiring, and hope, here's to more change for all of us, really.
Here's to more change. Absolutely. Thank you very much for having me, Kyla. And all the best with the future sessions as well.
Thank you. Have a great day. Bye.